Welcome to Channel 342 Financial News, your leader in financial information. I'm Ron Burgundy. Tonight's broadcast begins with a telling story about Ponzi schemes by our trusted investigative reporting team, the Bernie Madoffs. Millions of unsuspecting investors are duped every year and potentially lose their life savings, making Ponzi scheme awareness important to all investors. It is important to be aware of the red flags and to be an informed citizen in the world of finances. Our reporter in the field, Veronica Corningstone, tells us more.
Thank you, Ron. Today, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission defines a Ponzi scheme as an investment fraud that involves the payment of purported returns to existing investors from funds contributed by new investors. In other words, a financial schemer uses new investors' money to continue paying the previous investors high returns on a consistent basis. Charles Ponzi is responsible for the term Ponzi scheme because of a fraud that he committed in the 1920s. The scheme that Ponzi is most famous for is postal arbitrage with international reply coupons, or IRCs. An IRC is essentially a way for someone to prepay postage internationally. He would take the payments that his investors gave him to purchase these IRCs, but would keep the money for early investors and his own gain. Ponzi was so successful during his 1920 scheme that he took in, on average, $250,000 per day. This is equivalent to $2.6 million today. Ponzi was charged with 86 counts of mail fraud and served 12 years in jail before being deported back to Italy. Although the scheme is named for Charles Ponzi, he was not the first to commit this type of fraud. One of the earliest recorded was by William 520% Miller in 1899. However, because Ponzi schemes involved nearly 7 times more money than Miller's, Ponzi scheme became more famous and thus earned his name forever. Back to you, Ron.
Thanks, Veronica. Now to Champ Kind with a special report on the history of Ponzi schemes.
Thanks, Ron. As Veronica mentioned, Charles Ponzi is the namesake for these heinous financial crimes. However, his scheme was not the biggest or most bold. One of the most recent and highest profile schemes is that of Bernie Madoff. Over the last half of the 20th century and on into last decade, Madoff, once a chairman of NASDAQ, was taking unsuspecting investors' money and promising high returns. His scheme was so fine-tuned that he was able to dupe even the sharpest financial minds. Madoff built quite a name for himself, and his arrest in 2008 was a shock to many. Millions of dollars were lost. Back to you, Ron. I'm good.
Boy, that Bernie sure made off with a lot of money. Now to you, Brick Tamlin.
Ponzi schemes are an old trade that traverses traditional values and fundamental ethics of financial investment. They can have catastrophic effects on any national economy if unchecked. The number of people who fall victim to Ponzi schemes is big enough to devastate a national economy. The potential for civil disobedience in the event of a Ponzi scheme is real, and this may destabilize government functions and threaten national security, as witnessed in Albania, where a newly formed democratic Albanian government was overrun with civil disorder after the country fell victim to several Ponzi schemes.
Thanks, Brick. Some people think that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, but here's me telling you why it's not. They have the same general structure. In Ponzi schemes, you have new investors paying off old investors with the money they bring in, and in Social Security, younger workers' tax money is used to pay off older workers. But Ponzi schemes and Social Security is not the same because Ponzi schemes are a fraudulent investment. Investors are tricked and the transactions are kept secret. Social Security is very transparent. Investors know exactly what's happening as it's a matter of public record. In fact, Ponzi schemes are usually very short-lived and only last several hundred days. Bernie Madoff made off several years, but Social Security has been alive for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years, so obviously they're not the same.
There are 2 big reasons to know as much as one can about Ponzi schemes. One is so that people will not accidentally start one. It may seem like it's not a big deal, but creation of a Ponzi scheme is actually a serious crime. It is considered fraud and punishable by not only jail time, but also a lifetime of public ridicule. The most practical reason to know about Ponzi schemes is so that you can avoid them and prevent loss to yourself. It is very difficult to get money that is invested into a Ponzi scheme back out once it has been discovered. Typically, only the very wealthy can afford to do so, and they only get a small fraction of what they put in. A recent article in the New York Times said that one of the easiest ways to get caught in a Ponzi scheme is to invest with someone you know. People often take advantage of those who trust them because their friends will not take the time to do the proper research about them. Criminals will not hesitate to take advantage of referrals among people groups such as similar races, religions, or even families. To save all of you students and other folks out there from losing your retirement or investments, I have 4 helpful tips to help you spot a Ponzi scheme. Number 1, they promise very high returns with small risk. Number 2, you're encouraged to reinvest profits rather than collecting them. They have initial high fees. And last but not least, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
From all of us here at Channel 342 Financial News, you stay classy.
And thanks for stopping by.
But mostly, stay classy.